So I went to church, Holy Family Basilica. They have this adoration room. When I went there, like I told you, it's an adoration room. There are so many hymn books and Bibles. So I couldn't take a hymn book. So I just took a Bible. So just flipping through the pages. Then I just bumped into it, Psalm 27. So I just decided to read it. Like you see, you skim through something. So when I read the first verse, I was like, wow, this is interesting. I felt like it was speaking to me directly.
The Lord is my guide. I will go nowhere without Him. And He is my light and salvation. The Lord is my delight. In His presence I have joy. And He knows my heart, loving me endlessly.
It took several years for this to change, but I would say at the very onset, I started, first of all, I was of course, in high school. I got into CU, and then I formed new friends, people who were actually genuinely concerned about me, and they were genuinely concerned about my well-being. And so from that point, I would say my relationship with people changed, number one, and then my relationship with God as well changed. I started understanding, so this is what it means to be loved. This is what it means to be cherished by God. This is what it means when we say, I'm created in the image of God. It was the very onset. But it took a couple of years, well into my university days. I think the biggest point was the community around me over the years, because even in the university, when I got into this group of guys, awesome guys in university, we used to do life together, we used to do ministry together. I could actually feel like I belong. My struggle used to be, I don't belong, I don't matter, but I could actually feel like I belong, that I matter to someone, people love me. But then the turning point would be now the complete understanding, because it was a process, but the point where I had a complete understanding that my image and my identity is actually in God. It's not in my parents, it's not in our family, it's not in my friends, but it's in God. But you see, all this time, these people it's like they've been shepherding me in that direction. So the moment now in university, I realized, you know what, my identity is in God. And my identity in God doesn't change because of the circumstances that change around me. I think that was the turning point.
The turning point for me was high school. High school was a turning point for me because in high school, I remember I got into, even getting into high school was a miracle. And I remember I got into high school the second half of my first year. You know, I got to school in Form 1 in June, while people go to school in February. So, and I did pretty well, because they said, if you perform very well, you're gonna go to the next class. If you don't, because you came late, you're not gonna go ahead. And I remember by the end of that year, I was number 48 out of 50, and I had beaten two people. Two people. No, actually, not the end of the year, actually, because I got in July when we did the end of term exams. I was number 48 out of 50. I was like, what? I've beaten two people who've been here since February. By the time it came to the end of the year in November, I was number 28 out of 50. And so they were like, hey, you've really improved. You can go to the next level. For me, that was a turning point. And then when I got into Form 2, the teacher looked at me and said, you're going to be the class prefect. And then that same year, I was elected the CU chairman. I went to the debate club. I was elected the chairman. I went to the Straight Talk Club. I was elected the chairman. Then the next year, I was elected the assistant head boy. And then every place I went, I was getting an opportunity to lead. And so for me, I felt like this must mean something. That was a turning point for me, because even taking up these positions with regards to where I came from, I felt like, but then since these positions kept coming, and I felt like people appreciated me for being a leader, even if I didn't appreciate myself. And I feel like that was a turning point for me. And apart from that, I also went into church, and I started getting leadership positions in church. But I feel like high school for me was the turnaround. It was the place that made me feel like, regardless of your past, people care about you, people value what you have, and people are willing to allow you into spaces that you lead them.
And I stopped worrying about small things. I stopped worrying about what my guardians at that time thought of me, or even people at work. I was just living a free life. So after realizing that by going to this adoration room and feeling that peace, I knew I wanted to feel this kind of peace always. So every time I would make it a point to go there. And that way I grew spiritually also. And it helped me. Okay, at first I had to, because now I was feeling so peaceful in my heart. I had to forgive my past. I had to forgive all those relatives. I had to I had to change all those forms of emotional abuses to positive things. I had to change my own, you see, self perception. It was so negative.
It was a journey first in terms of the interactions, the relationships I had, and the conversations I had with people. They were like building blocks to something bigger that God was building in me. But I would say when I was in my second year in the university, of course, I used to understand this whole concept of being a child of God, being, bought by grace, bought by the blood of Jesus. But then it didn't click up until I think when I was in second year, when it hit me, you know what? All my sins, all my faults, all my shame, all my guilt, my self-esteem issues, they've been paid for. And I don't need to earn it back. They've already been paid for. So I think in second year is when there's a particular time, I can't remember the exact time, but I remember it was in my second year in the university. I actually felt, you know what, I don't need to keep earning this grace. It has already been paid for and it's final. But then it was a journey. Up until that point, it was a journey where the building blocks were coming into play. Yeah.
To be honest, I forgave them, but I can't forget. When I meet them, yes, we're just friendly. We'll talk, but I'll try not to even remind them. But some, especially my stepmom, that is so. I'm still working on it. But the other relatives, I forgave them. Working on forgetting.
God helped me a lot because when I turned 40, there's a lady who started working with me and more on the marriage side. So she kept talking to me about how I was behaving as a woman, how I was, how my behavior was reflecting on my husband. So that work, because she said it was like I was emasculating him, if you know what I mean, because now I am choleric. And if I say something, it comes out with a lot of force. So she tried telling me that I don't have to put my foot down for something to be done. There's another way I can make requests. There's another way I can ask for something to get done. So slowly by slowly, I prayed about it a lot because now I kept asking God, you're the one who created me as a choleric. I did not create myself. There has to be something that you'd like me to add to this world. So I asked God to help me use what I have, not to hurt, but to build, to sort of now make people comfortable and happy where I am. So God helped by bringing people in my life who taught me a lot. I've had friends who've also taught me how to lead second. It's not easy, by the way. So every time I tend to take a back seat and let other people lead, even though I feel like I have to give my voice in that. So God has helped me in that way to just let me see myself and to let me see what I am saying and what I'm doing and how it's affecting other people.
So what prevents me from going to one is I'd go back again to my background. I didn't like it. I didn't like where I was, and I felt like this is not where God created me to be. Physically, spiritually, emotionally, I just felt like there's so many things that made me feel unworthy, and that is not how it was intended to be. And so for me, I feel like that is what prevents me from going back to one, because I never want to go back there. I don't think there's something that's preventing me to go to 10. I feel I'm on my way to 10. And I say that because I don't want to give an impression of I am already there. I say that because I am on a journey of becoming better every day. And this is a lifelong journey. I feel like for me, 10 is a lifelong journey. And so I am in my 30s now. And so I feel by the time I get to my 70s and 80s, by the time that God gives me, maybe I can say, hey, I'm already there. But I feel I'm approaching a 6 because it's a journey. So I don't feel like there's anything preventing me from going to 10, but I feel like it's just a process that I have to go through. And there's things that I have to overcome along the way. I don't intend to get to a 10 as long as I am in a place where I still can improve. I still want to keep improving. So I'm approaching 6. Hopefully in the next 5-6 years, I get to a 7, 10, and by the time I hit 80, probably I'll be at a 10.
I have purposed every time I wake up, when I'm praying, when I'm preparing myself, there's that self-talk I do. I have to talk to myself and tell myself, look, there's a reason why God has called you here. You have what other people need out there. So go out there and just do your best. So every time I'm giving myself, I encourage myself. I encourage myself in the Lord. If I feel like I need a bit more encouragement, I look for videos or preaching or sermons that would make me feel like I am here for a reason and there's something God wants me to give to the society. So that's what I've been doing all along. And just sitting around people who are more encouraging, who are more garnering for me than the people who put me down. So normally if it's someone who puts me down, I just tend to avoid them. I just chuck them from my friendship list and I just stick around people who I know are positive and help me do better.
I think there are pockets of personal insecurities for me. And by pockets, I mean, they are not insecurities on a daily basis, prolonged on a daily basis, but they are insecurities like once in a while. You know, once in a while you wake up and you're like, hey, I don't think I'm ready. So I would say pockets because, so for instance, the first instance was, of course, when I got into now ministry, when I got into full-time ministry. I think it hit me when I was assigned to be in charge of a whole ministry back then when I was in my discovery days now. 2018, the second season of my leadership development. So I was sent to a church called Mavuno Crossroads, and I was given a whole ministry to lead. And I was like, you guys, do you really know? I'm not even that qualified for this. No experience in children ministry, nothing. And then you actually give me to lead a ministry that is very core and very key in the church. So I felt like, at that point, I really felt like I was not qualified. In fact, I would see the people that we are serving with, some of them volunteers, and I'm like, these guys are more of pastors, they are more of leaders than myself. So I had that season of insecurity. But then over time, I grew out of it. But then it's like every other year, I just have a season of insecurity, because the following year is now when I was called back to come to the church where I used to serve, Mavuno Lifeway. And then a few months later, I'm told, now you're going to lead this church. And I'm like, you guys, are you crazy? I have little to no experience in ministry, and yet I've been entrusted in such a big ministry. So there have been those pockets. Of course, now getting into marriage and fatherhood, I'm like, again, you guys, I don't even know how to raise a child.
You know, when I was going through it, I still talked to God, and I'm like, God, is this how you intended for me to be? Is this where you created for me to be all my life? And I felt Jeremiah 1:5 was a very strong word that I felt God gave me. Even before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you, and I set you apart as a prophet among nations. And so it wasn't just among one nation, it was among many nations. And so I looked at that and I was like, wow, if God trusts me to be a voice among nations, why am I not trusting myself to be a voice among even my locality, even in the spaces I find myself? And so that encourages me. Every space I find myself, I tell myself, you know what? God has chosen you. You're here because God has allowed you to be here, and He's taking. And this is not the destination. The destination is much farther than where you are right now. So for me, that was really significant. And the turning point, like I said, was high school, where I looked at myself and I prayed, and God was like, when I started becoming CU and then I was like, okay, God, what are you doing? And that's when that verse was really, really big, spoken to me, and really big. And I've taken that verse in every place. So every time that feeling creeps up and tries to make me feel unworthy, I go back to that. I'm like, God, you knew me even before I was formed in my mother's womb. You knew this opportunity would come for me, the opportunity I have right now. You knew I would thrive. And you knew that this opportunity would take me to the next level of where you want me. So I encourage myself all the time with that verse, because I believe that God has called me for that specific reason.
I don't know what I'm doing. So there have been those seasons where I was even telling my wife the other day that I think everything you learn about fatherhood or motherhood or parenthood in general, before you get there, all of those things go out of the window, and it's like you start from scratch. So we've been learning things, we've been celebrating milestones, but I was like, initially I was like, I'm not ready for this, I'm not ready to be a father. The time when we were going to the hospital about to receive our baby, I was like, by the way, I'm not ready to be a father. In fact, I made a prayer and I was like, God, I'm not ready for this, please help me. So I've been having those moments of insecurities, but they've not been so prolonged.
You cannot be a leader who's very confident while as a person you're looking at yourself as someone who's not worthy. So you have to first of all value yourself as a person to even value yourself as a leader. Because the leader we see out there is a person. He's not someone who starts. Someone who I used to watch wrestling growing up, and there was one guy who used to come and be walking like this, and then the bell rings, and then this person comes to life, and then beats up one person, and then when the bell rings, goes back to this posture. That is not what leadership is. Leadership is consistent.